Hello, everyone. My name is Ana Martha Ayala, and I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel. As a reminder, I do every video in English and Spanish, and the degree theory is based on modern Western astrology using the Placidus house system. In today's video, I wanted to talk to you about the ingress of Saturn into Aries, which is going to happen this month, May 24th of 2025. So I also want to discuss some historical things of when Saturn has been in Aries in other eras, right? Because Saturn goes into Aries about every 30 years or so. So let me share with you so you could see how the events have or will play out. Now, just because things have happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to happen again, but there's certain themes that come up that will happen. So Saturn enters Aries on May 24th, 2025 through September 1st of 2025. Then it retrogrades into Pisces. And then it will return back into Aries on February 15th, 2026 through April 13th of 2028. So the first Saturn ingress in Aries that I want to discuss with you is back on April 25th, 1937 through October 17th of 1937. And I listed the events. I just Googled, like, okay, what were the major events that happened during this time, right? And so it says that it's the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War in China, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart, which is the woman pilot that went across the ocean, or she was attempting to go across the ocean, and she disappeared. The Great Purge in the Soviet Union, the completion of the Golden Gate Bridge, the book of Mice and Men, for those of you who had to read it in high school. January 14th, 1938 through July 6th, 1939, Germany's annexation of Austria, the Munich Agreement concerning Czechoslovakia. I don't know how to pronounce this in Nazi Germany and Austria. In 1939, we have the invasion of Poland by Germany, which triggered the start of World War II. Also, the Soviet Union's invasion of Poland, the Russo-Finnish War, the conclusion of the Spanish Civil War, the signing of a non-aggression pact between Germany and the Soviet Union, although Hitler went back on his word. What a surprise. But that happens later on. September 22nd, 1939 through March 20th, 1940. Obviously, significant events happen in World War II. It was the invasion of Western Europe by Germany, the Battle of Britain, the North African campaign, and then Japan continued to its expansion. And if you remember history, Japan was one of the major powers in World War II. They had the kamikaze planes, right, that would dive into the aircraft carriers to try to sink the ships. So the next, 30 years later, right, March 3rd, 1967 through April 29th, 1969, we had the Six-Day War, which was the conflict between Israel and its Arab neighbor, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. And Israel gained control of the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank. So you see where this theme has already started, right? You have wait a minute here, the Nigerian Civil War, San Francisco Summer of Love, you have the first human heart transplant, and you have the release of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. We have the Apollo 1 fire. We have the Greek military coup. the long hot summer. So there was racial unrest and riots erupted in several American cities. Um, you have some communication here from first radio pulsars at Cambridge University. The Vietnam War continued and the US got involved and protests grew against the war. In 1968, so we have the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. We have, which is a series of surprise attacks by North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces. And so this was a turning point and increased the anti-war sentiment in the United States. We had the Prague Spring and subsequent Warsaw Pact. We had the invasion of Czechoslovakia, the assassination of Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy in the United States. And of course, we had the Apollo 8 mission. Now, the Prague Spring was a political liberalization that was crushed by the Warsaw Pact, led by the Soviet Union. And in the United States, we had civil rights movement. Like I said, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, but the new Civil Rights Act was enacted into law because, I think mostly because of Dr. King. So anyway, you have Richard Nixon winning the presidential election. The Apollo 8 mission became the first manned mission into orbit space. In 1969, Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. We had the Woodstock Festival, the Stonewall riots, the Vietnam War, the demonstrations continued. Like I said, Richard Nixon's inauguration, the Robert F. Kennedy assassination. Now, look at this. The Manson murders. In August, members of the cult by Charles Manson murdered several people, including Sharon Tate. And you're going to see themes come up, right? And I'll give you the last 30 years, which was back from 1996 to 1998. But the themes that you're looking at are some country invades another country. Wars get started. You have cults that do mass murders or mass suicide, and the suicide happens in the late 90s. So you can see the themes that are coming up, right? So from those, astrologers extract, what can potentially happen, right? So the third ingress of Saturn into Aries, at least, the most recent ones, right? Because I'm only doing three. Saturn has ingressed in Aries, like I said, every 30 years. So Bosnia, a UN tribunal charged war crimes by Bosnians, Muslim, and Croats. The Taliban seized Kabul. Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu was elected as prime minister. So who's the prime minister of Israel now? The same man. U.S. election. Bill Clinton won his second term as president. A UN Secretary General Kofi Annan was elected. In NASA, they launched the Mars Global Surveyor. So NASA launched the Space Shuttle Discovery. That was the first shuttle that launched and actually came back, right? It was the first time ever because usually when they launched, they had to parachute down, but you couldn't use the same vehicle to go back into space. So, and we had Dolly, the sheep, was the first cloned mammal. Mobile phones. The first flip phone, I know that's ancient history. In the Centennial Olympic Park, there was a bombing in Atlanta where 111 people were injured and 2 were killed. And then you have an assassination attempt was made on Uday Hussein, the heir to Saddam Hussein. 1997, you have Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. That was a big global phenomenon. And the Titanic was released, so that became a sensational movie. Here we go. Heaven's Gate mass suicide. 39 members of the cult committed suicide and believed that they would be transported to another planet. So with this, especially with Neptune being in Aries, there will be a tendency because certain events are gonna potentially happen where we go into war, major war, and people are going to be looking for a way out, right? Either through religion. Neptune in Aries means a new religion, a new cult, whether it's human, meaning religion, or artificial intelligence. Don't believe everything that the computer spits out, okay? Especially in astrology. If I were you guys, before Gemini goes into Uranus, because that means that the books are going to phase out. The physical books are going to cease to exist, in my opinion, when Uranus goes into Gemini. Not immediately, obviously, but during the transit, everything is going to be an ebook. Places like Barnes and Noble are just going to go out of business. Little bookstores. If you own a bookstore, try to keep in mind what else you can do with a bookstore. Um, anyhow, um, things of that nature. Then you have mass suicides that are possible or mass killings. This cult theme is going to come up again. So, going back to the historical events, IBM's computer Deep Blue beats Gary Kasparov in chess. So computer beat a human in chess. Mars Pathfinder lands on Mars. A Microsoft 97 was released introducing the web integration. So Wi-Fi was introduced. The first Wi-Fi enabled devices were available, which marked the beginning of the internet connectivity. Hong Kong was handed over from the United Kingdom to China. There was an Asian financial crisis, which is happening now in China because China is having big time problems with money. Right, Diana, Princess of Wales, died in a car accident. Scotland and Wales referendum. Scotland voted to establish parliament within the UK, and Wales voted for greater self-governance. In 1998, 1999, you had the Kosovo War. You had nuclear tests. India conducted 3 nuclear tests, followed by Pakistan's 5 tests in response, sparking international condemnation. And there is issues now between India and Pakistan. So again, the themes are repeating, right? You have the Good Friday Accord with Northern Ireland. The European Union agreed on one currency, the euro. The U.S. embassy bombings in Tanzania and Kenya. Let me see what else. Political scandals, Paula Jones and Monica Lewinsky. The Middle East peace talks. The agreement between Israel and Palestine made progress in the Middle East. So Augusto Pinochet arrest. So he was the dictator of Chile and he got arrested in London. Iraq and the UN arms inspectors. So, the US wanted to confirm that Iraq did not have any nuclear arms. 1999, you have the Kosovo War. You have the Y2K bug. You have the Clinton impeachment, which he was acquitted. Carlisle War, India and Pakistan. Here we go. It's the same thing that's happening now. Earthquakes. Significant earthquakes struck Turkey, killing 18,000 people in Taiwan. So we might see earthquakes hit those 2 countries again. And I know that there have been several earthquakes. I just, I don't remember exactly where. So, Russia's military offensive in Chechnya. You have Taiwan earthquake. You have the U.S. economy is doing great. Abdullah Öcalan captured. Turkey captured Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan and sentenced him to death. The Columbine high school shootings. So I think this is the very first shooting that we experienced here in the United States. And then we have the New York City's first West Nile virus cases. It was reported in 1999. So that's basically the historical perspective on Saturn ingressing into Aries. So what kind of themes did we see? We saw invasions. We saw, uh, you know, besides the invasions, we saw the cult things happening, the mass murders. There are things that get repeated. So that this is how astrologers basically make predictions. Obviously the planets in the last 90 years were in different locations, right? It's not going to be the same exact thing, but the themes that come up are. All right, so I gave you basically a very general historical perspective. Um, but now I'm going to talk to you more about a personal, uh, more on the personal side. So now, here we go again. Another very interesting planet ingressing into Aries. Just kidding, because Aries is getting bombarded. We have Neptune in Aries, we have Saturn in Aries. Thank God the lunar nodes left Aries. Either in Pisces and Virgo, but Aries is going to have their life pretty much turned around. Like I said, Saturn enters Aries on May 24th through September 1st of this year. And Saturn will go up to 1 degree 56 minutes of Aries, where it will station. And then on July 13th, it turns retrograde into Pisces. So that means that it's going to be stationing from in Aries, I'm sorry, um, at 1 degree and 56 minutes. And then it will go into Pisces September 2nd through November 27th, and it will station at 25 degrees of Pisces through November 27th. So if you have anything, well, no, I'm sorry. The stationing at 25th degrees will be from October 28th through December 28th of 2025. And then it moves to Aries, it turns direct and it moves to Aries, and then it ingresses on February 15th of 2026 through April 13th of 2028, and it will stay in Aries for a little bit over 2 years. So again, if you have any planets between 1 and 2 degrees of Aries and 25 degrees of Pisces, that is going to station in that part of your chart. So that part of your chart, that house, will be very important. You're going to see themes come up that maybe happened 30 years ago, if you're old enough. And if this is your first time with Aries and Saturn in your natal chart, make notes, have a journal to see what comes up during these next 2 years, so that when Saturn returns to Aries, you'll have a good idea of what's going to happen in your life, right? So if you have any planets around 1 to 2 degrees of Aries or at 25 degrees of Pisces, make a note, because those planets are going to be affected with Saturnian qualities, okay? Now, Saturn is in fall in Aries. So that means that it's not the best energy for Saturn. Remember that Saturn is exalted in Libra, which, Aries is the opposite sign of Libra. So that's why Saturn is in fall right now. So you all know that Saturn rules delays, limitations, obstacles, controls, regulation, rules, responsibilities, problems, fears, issues with authorities, but it is also the planet that gives you perseverance, endurance, sticking it out through difficult challenges that you come across in life. It gives you maturity. You grow up in the area where that Saturn is, right? So, um, Saturn rules time, the word no, not now. And you need to wait because, like I said, Saturn rules time. And then you have Aries, which is pretty much the opposite, right? To like always be active, to be brave, hardworking, enthusiastic. Aries doesn't like monotony. They like to be the leader. They like to be first. It's like a go, 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 go. Let's get this done. Let's get it off my list because the list is so long, right? So there's like a push and pull energy that Saturn wants to go. No, Aries wants to go. But Saturn says, no, wait. Let's not just plow through this, right? Things need to be done correctly. Let's yeah, it's going to take more time, but we're going to do things right. Saturn likes to plan things out, double check, move slowly. Aries is like, let's just do it now. Better yet, let's just do it yesterday. I mean, time's a wasting. This reminds me of the Disney movie Mulan, where there's a part that the Mulan and Shang are going, they're trying to figure out how to get into the Emperor's palace. And Shang asks Mulan, do you have a plan? And she answers something like, I just make it up as I go. So Shang is Saturn and Mulan is Aries. It's like, no, 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 no time for planning. We just gotta go. Right? So um the area in your chart ruled by Aries, there may be some kind of fear because Saturn does rule fear that comes up where you need to take control, Saturn, of the situation and show your Aries willpower, but show them using Saturn's ways, right? That you're going to overcome this fear. Now, the issue is that Neptune is also there. So that's a whole other video, which I did. And you can, I'm going to see if I can link it below. But Aries is the fighter, never let them see you sweat, right? Even though Aries gets scared. It's not that, Aries doesn't get scared, but they don't show it. It's like you move on, you're brave or you appear to be brave. So this is how you deal with Saturn and Aries. You might be scared to take on a new job, but you do it anyway. And you face it with, like I said, Saturn qualities, right? Endurance, perseverance, and you just plow on. So, before we get started with the 12th ascendants, right? We need to, oops, I just lost my Saturn here. Um, you might need to listen to two houses because, for example, I'm an Aries rising, so my Aries 0 point is in the 12th house. So I'm going to listen to the 12th house and the first house because that's my rising sign. And for those people that have Aries, Ascendant, Sun, the angles of your chart. So that's okay, so the angles are the first house, the seventh house, the 10th house, or the fourth house in the sign of Aries, where the degree is anywhere from like 1 to 3, maybe even up to 5 degrees because Pluto is also in the picture. This should be a very positive transit for you guys for this year, right? Um, because we're going to have Pluto between 1 to 3 degrees. Uranus is going to enter into Gemini from 0 to 1 degree, and then Neptune is already in Aries. It's going to go up to 2 degrees. So if you have an Aries ascendant, an Aries sun, when Saturn is within 3 to 5 degrees of your ascendant or sun sign, please be careful with your health, especially the bones, because Saturn rules bones, right? So for Aries, it's the head, your teeth, your jawbone. All right. Now let's start with the ascendants. For Aries, let me straighten out Saturn here. Oh man, this thing. There you go. For Aries rising or Aries sun, but Aries rising, or for people that have Saturn in Aries natally, if this is your first Saturn return, congrats. You're an adult now, according to astrology, so you need to behave like one. Maybe, when you have your first Saturn return, maybe you're getting married, you're buying your first home, you're having a baby, you get that first big professional job in your career, some big milestone in your life happens. If this is your second Saturn return, then you will see or not see the fruits of your labor. If you have worked hard, been honest, discipline, you follow Saturn's ways, right? No shortcuts, no dirty dealings or anything like that. You will see stability in life. The only thing is for the second Saturn return, health issues can come up, so don't dismiss them. I mean, you get the stability in life, right? But you also get you might get some health concerns, and you also get wrinkles and gray hairs as well. So Saturn brings additional responsibilities. So you may feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders pertaining to family or career, specifically because Saturn will be squaring those two houses, right? For Aries, this Saturn here is going to be squaring your home, and it's going to be squaring your career, and it's going to be in opposition to your seventh house, relationships. So that can be just responsibility city for these three areas, right? Saturn rules responsibility. That's why I'm saying that. Now, on another note, Neptune can dissolve how you see yourself, because remember, Neptune, everything that it touches, it dissolves. So maybe your body is going to change because, um, you know, you do something that, like an exercise program. Saturn is going to give you a great staying power to start up exercise routines, of course, with the approval of your doctor. Anything that you start with muscle training in Aries, with Saturn there, the muscles will stay. So you can define a new identity. People are going to see you for Aries rising, right? They're going to see you a more serious, dedicated person, new goals, or new approach to life, less party, right? And more goal oriented. You want to change things, like you might change your eating habits to healthier choices. Um, Usually when we have Saturn going through the 12th house, there was something that you left behind, because with Saturn in the 12th house, a cycle closes, right? So maybe with Saturn in Pisces, there was some kind of fear of failing, some subconscious fear, a fear of failing, maybe a marriage you left behind, a job, some type of responsibility that you really didn't want to do, but you had to do it anyway. So now Saturn in your first house gives you a new cycle. So make good use of it, Aries. This is a brand new start for you. Put it to good use. All right, so for Taurus rising, Saturn is in your 12th house. So for this is all about spiritualities, things that are secret, your subconscious, working behind the scenes, psychological issues that may come up. With Saturn in the 12th house, you need to come up with a spiritual practice, but in your own way, right? Aries, I do things my way, right? Not because I have to go to temple or church every Saturday or Sunday or whatever. No, you're going to come up with your own spiritual practice in your own way, and you make it up as you go, as you see fit. Maybe one week you do yoga, the other one you start meditation, maybe you do past life regression, whatever spiritual practice it is that you do it, go for it. Um, Tibetan sound bowls. I mean, whatever gives you inner peace and guidance when you try to connect with the spiritual realm, your guides, your guardian angel, things like that. So with both Saturn and Neptune in Aries, this will give you clarity about your dreams, right? Because Neptune is to dream, and Saturn just gives you like, hey, this is what it's all about. So it's a good time to seek out a therapist for those of you with any secret or hidden fears or something like that, or if you have a chronic illness, you might need to be very careful and follow your doctor's advice. Get a second opinion because remember that Neptune is also there. So, and Neptune and Saturn are both going to be in your 12th house, which rules chronic illnesses. All right. So for Gemini, and for Gemini rising, Saturn is in your 11th house. So for Geminis, Saturn will define your goals, your dreams, also your friendships and your organizations that you belong to. Saturn is like a new broom that cleans out the house that it's in. So in this case, some so-called friends that only call you up when they need something, that, they need your help or your time, um, you know, those type of people need to, like, they will be escorted out. So, yes, you need to help people, right? But with the energy from Pluto and Uranus, this can bring very positive new friendships, new goals, new dreams, right? So anything that takes away from you, Saturn will clean it out. Um, on another note, actually, someone who is older, Saturn can enter your life, right? As a mentor or like a very really good dependable friend. So you need to be picky about the people and organizations that you give your time, your energy, your money to, right? You need to clean out stuff that's not good for you. Now, for Cancer, for Cancer, Saturn is in your 10th house. So this is a square. Because it's one of the angles in your chart. So the 10th house deals with your career, your parents, the way society sees you, your reputation as well. So listen carefully. This time Saturn was going to test you big time. If you have been diligent in your work, in your profession, then you may receive a promotion, some type of recognition, praise, when Saturn exits the 10th house, right? It's going to test you big time. But if you do everything the way it's, again, according to Saturnian ways, right? Then you will get that recognition, that promotion, etc. Now, if on the other hand, you have been lazy at work, taking shortcuts, not doing things properly, or the job is really not aligned with what you should be doing, then you may lose your job. So this is not astrology, but let me give you some advice from my background of many years in corporate America. Um, Human resources doesn't work for you, doesn't work on your behalf. Human resources is there because their only purpose is to make sure that you cannot sue the company if they terminate you. That is the only reason. And of course, they want to make sure that you can't sue them for discrimination based on race, on sex, religion, etc. So there can be a manager that, maybe just doesn't like you or wants to put one of their buddies into your position, right? So God forbid, if you should get written up, there's always two sides to a story, right? So, in your response to the write-up, be as detailed and specific as possible about the incidents that they cite, right? Are there any witnesses? Can you back up what you're saying with emails? If so, attach them to the response. Hopefully, this won't happen to you, but in case it does, I'm giving you pointers from, like I said, my corporate background. You know, you can document evidence as much as your boss can. You need to fight, Aries, right? You need to fight, and you need to do it in Saturnian ways, being methodical, making a plan, having something to respond, right? So this will buy you time to get your number one, get your financial orders, your financial affairs in order, and start looking for another job if that's, what you want to do. See what happens now in the Ingress this month. And if the same theme comes up in July, then the last hit is going to be February 2026. And that could be the time where the status or state of your employment is determined, right? Whether you stay, you get terminated, or they lay you off, one, or God willing, like I said, maybe it's just an endurance test that Saturn is going to give you, or hopefully it's a promotion when it exits. Besides work, or, instead of work, it might have to do something with one or both of your parents. Maybe you need to take up some responsibility on their behalf, because that remember that the 10th and the 4th house, because this here, right, is going to be opposing your 4th house. So this axis, 10 and 4th, deals with your parents. So perhaps you become responsible for your parents, either financially, medically, and Saturn puts on heavy lessons to see what you're made of. Like, this is going to be a difficult challenge. So remember, perseverance, endurance, doing things the right way, and things should work out. Leo. For Leo rising, Saturn is in your 9th house. So this placement, is not so bad. You can become very conservative in your beliefs and religion and your philosophy in life. If you're in college or the university, you become very disciplined, very organized, you study hard, or I hope that this is not the case, you decide to quit and drop out of school. Because of course, Saturn means no, right? But like I said, hopefully this is not the case. Travel most likely will be for work and not necessarily for vacations or having fun. This house also involves legal matters, which can take longer than you think to settle. So remember that Saturn rules time, and Leo is a fire sign like Aries. So this trine should be favorable, right? It's one of the best places to have a the Saturn transit. Now, Virgo. For Virgo, this Saturn in Aries happens in your 8th house. So the focus here is on joint finances. And if you are not in partnership or married, then your focus is on investments, for like retirement and stuff like that, long range plans. So keep a careful eye on them. Um, you may get like your will, your trust ready during this time, like you are organizing and just setting everything proper, in your eighth house matters, right? There can be a death in your environment, not yours, just in your environment, but you will hear that someone passed away. Uh, it's not the best time with Saturn in the eighth, for intimacy. So try to make it a point to spice it up for your partner. Also, I would not recommend incurring a debt alone, borrowing money, because it will take you longer to pay off that loan, right? And if you receive support from someone else, like alimony, child support, from your parents, from the government, it may end. For Libra, for Libra rising, Saturn is in your seventh house. So this is a difficult transit because it's an opposition, right? You need to make a decision. Just like I told Gemini, Saturn is a new broom that cleans out the house. So if your marriage or long-term relationship is strong, you have nothing to worry about. It will make it even stronger, right? However, if the relationship is having a lot of issues, then it can end. So divorce is in order, or the person will move out, will move out. However, if your marriage, like I said, is good, it's built on solid ground, then it strengthens the relationship, right? You get even closer to your significant other. Now, sometimes this can mean that a person from the past re-enters your life again. Um, so think about it, right? Whoever this person is going to be. It's not a good time to get married if you have Saturn transiting your seventh house, because that means that the birth chart of this marriage is going to be full of responsibility and duties. So it's not the best time to get married. I'm sorry to say. Now, for Scorpio, this Saturn goes into your sixth house. This house deals with health, daily routines, your daily work. If you have a job that you just don't like, you're just there for the paycheck, like to pay your bills, you might decide just to leave. Just make sure that you have another job lined up, because with Saturn in the sixth, it may be difficult to get another job right away, or it can take longer than you thought to get another job. If a health issue comes up, follow the instructions of your doctor, right? Whatever the doctor says, make sure you go through or get a second opinion, because you have Neptune also in the sixth. So Saturn is all about discipline, doing the right thing. So when Saturn leaves, it will give you a gift. If you follow your doctor's orders, you can be healthier by the end of the transit. Because this is the way things work, right? And like I said, Neptune in the sixth means, you should get a second opinion if, God forbid, something comes up with your health that is serious. All right. So Sagittarius. For Sagittarius, Saturn is in your fifth house. Um, Fifth house is all about your kids, vacations, creative projects, things like that, right? Vacations as well, things that you do for fun. So you need to remember to have fun with Saturn going through your fifth house. Otherwise, the next 2.5 years is going to be really boring. You may have a lot more responsibility for your child, especially your firstborn, or maybe you are having your first child. And that's a scary thing, right? So remember that every mom was in your same spot, right? And the interesting thing is that when you leave the hospital, they give you the baby, but they don't give you an instruction manual to go with it. So this is basically winging it, right? Listen to your mom or your grandmother's advice when it comes to your, assisting your baby. But it's an Aries thing. You just need to, just go with it, make a plan, Saturn. and just go with it. On another note, if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend and you've been dating for some time, with this Saturn transit, you either define the relationship or it will end. With Saturn crossing or transiting your fifth house, there can be a man from your past that comes back into your life. Capricorn. Capricorn, your Aries is in your fourth house, so this is a square. This is a challenging aspect. So like Cancer, um, you know, you guys can be called upon to be more responsible for taking care of a parent. You can feel the responsibility of maybe buying a home. All that excitement was great. And now that you have your first payment of 360 payments, it can feel a little scary. Or you can buy another home. You can remodel your current one. Um, with Saturn in the fourth, a woman from your past can come back into your life because, because for Capricorn, this is an opposition to your 10th house, right? Eh, your career may be affected. It might be affected maybe because of the parental responsibilities that you're facing now, or your family duties is another thing that can, that can cause a lot of tension. For Aquarius rising. For Aquarius, this happens in, Saturn transiting your third house. This is actually one of the best placements to have a Saturn transit. There can be a concern for a sibling. So, something can happen, a health perspective to your sibling. Also, third house rules your thoughts, short trips, your car, your computer, your cell phone. Like I said, siblings, your extended family, like aunts, uncles, cousins, your neighborhood. But it also rules the way you think, right? So watch your thoughts because they can become very negative, even depressing. However, if you decide to use the power of Saturn, learn something new, a foreign language, IT stuff, whatever you want, because Saturn is there, you will remember forever. A remedy to use for the third house is to have your computer or screensaver with a mountain covered with ice and little goats on the top of the mountain, and this can mitigate some of the energy of Saturn. So Pisces. For Pisces rising, Saturn is going to ingress in your second house. This one is tough, okay? This has to be a time where you are practical and realistic about money, your budget, what you earn, and especially what you spend it on. Same thing goes for food intake. It's a great time to go on a diet, and it's actually one of the remedies for Saturn in the second house, right? Um, you are going to confront your biggest fears where finances are concerned. Now, if Saturn is making favorable aspects to, like Jupiter and Venus in your chart, then your income can be improved. One of the remedies for having Saturn in the second house is having a black leather wallet with old currency, something that hasn't, like the currency is outdated, is not being used, or having old currency in your wallet. And this should help mitigate some of that Saturn energy. All right. So basically this concludes the video. As always, if you would like a natal chart reading with me, please send me an email to amaastrology@aol.com. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel, send it to someone else that it may help. And I wish you the best with this Saturn in Aries. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.